developed realistic techniques that changed the entire course of Western drama. There is very little in modern drama that does not owe a death to him. Henrik was born on March 20th, 1828 in the town of Skien. Wrote his first play when he was 15, when he was working as a pharmacist after his father went bankrupt. In 1850, he left Skien and moved to Christiania, also known as Oslo, to study. His first play, called Cataline, from 1850, was about the main character being torn between two women who represent conflicting forces in himself. Ibsen's other early plays show the main character struggling to find his voice. After 1882, Ibsen concentrated more on the problems of the individual. For example, one of his works, The Wild Duck, in 1884, showed how the average man needs unreal and misleading thoughts or ideas to survive, and what happens to a family when it is forced to face the truth. Another one of his plays, Rosmersholm, in 1886, a man raised in a tradition of Christian duty and sacrifice tries to break his past.
19th century Norway. Economics. The Great Boom, 1843 to 1875. The Great Boom is considered one of the greatest economic growths to ever happen. New structures and technology increased labor productivity. The exportation of timber, fish, and services caused higher growth rates. Towards the end of the Great Boom, there was a major growth in food processing and dairy production. Politics. During the 19th century, Sweden and Norway had a continuous hatred towards each other. Sweden was constantly attacking Norway, forcing them to surrender just for Norway to declare their independence later. Eventually, the Swedish king allowed Norway freedom if they remained under Sweden's rule. Eventually, Norway decided to impeach the Swedish government and force the king to give in. Since then, Norway has been a parliamentary democracy. Population. The population in Norway grew rapidly in the 19th century. At the beginning of the century, there was 883,000 people, but by the end of the century, there were 2,240,000 people. This was all in despite of the fact that many people from there were moving to the USA in the late 19th century.
19th century gender roles in Scandinavia. Henrik Ibsen was writing during a time when women were, to a certain extent, enslaved in their gender roles, and when restrictions were placed upon them by a male-dominant culture. Women were raised believing that they had neither self-control nor self-government, but that they must yield to the stronger gender. In a household, the father would have complete control over the children, and if the father were to die, the mother would take over that control. A woman would be dependent on her father until she got married. Before the suffrage movement, women were allowed very few rights. They were not allowed to access higher education, and they did not have voting rights until the early 1900s. They also did not have the right to gain their own wealth or to inherit land until 1890. Unmarried women were not expected to work unless there was extreme financial problems in the home. After marriage, a woman would be expected to leave her father's home and live in her husband's home. She would then be dependent on her husband. Married women usually lived as housewives. Nowadays, when women are housewives or stay-at-home moms, they are seen as old-fashioned and an economic burden to society, and if their husbands are rich, they are viewed as lazy. But at this time in Norway, it was normal for women to be housewives and stay at home while their husbands worked. For women at this time, marriage was a financial transaction, so women aimed to marry into a rich family.
Dramatic realism was a general movement in the 19th century from the time period of 1870 to 1960. Mainstream theater from 1859 to 1900 were still a big part of theater. It developed the artistic movement and focused on everyday middle-class drama. Elements that can make a play realistic or non-realistic is staging, makeup, costuming, acting, and artificiality. Realistic drama began as an experiment to make theater more useful to society. Social and political ideals, playwriting, and some spectacular theatrical innovations helped bring